Hey, welcome. I've been doing a lot of development lately on this application development kit, and I just wanted to kind of make a couple of videos to help people get through and get started with this. So the kit is an open source project. It's on my GitHub repo. It's rcraven/kit. We're going to go through the README here, and I'm going to talk about all the steps. So there's really 4 steps. There's an installation, create development environment. We'll talk about provisioning servers and how eventually to do deployment. So those 4 steps. But before we do that, let's just talk about why another Docker and development kit. As I've done development in different frameworks like Laravel or Django or whatever else is out there, everything seems to have its own kind of kit or way to get the deployment going, or how to get a build, or how to deploy that technology stack in general. And what I feel like was missing is like a unified framework that I could use against all of those technology stacks. If I'm building in Laravel, if I'm building in Python using Django or Flask or Fast API, it doesn't matter. So this kit is template based. And what that means is I can kit new up a Laravel application, or I can kit new up a Fast API application. Because it's template based, we can continue to add more and more templates to this repository. When you use a template to create your tech stack, you get not only the application code, whether it's a starter kit or it's a code from your Git repo, but you also get infrastructure as code that you can use and modify and tweak so that you can develop your production environment. So that's the big pro that I see of this kit is these templates allow us to use the same kit across all the different technology stacks. Okay, so the first step is we have to install the kit itself. And the instructions are pretty simple. It's right here. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. I have a terminal window open right now. I am sitting essentially on my desktop, but I'm in a directory on my desktop. And the first thing I'm going to do is I want to make this project directory. And I'm going to get to that project directory. And then I'm just going to copy this. We're going to clone this repo into a infra directory. And so now I should see an infra directory. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch into that. And then there's one more step. There is a shell script here that I run to create an alias. So we're going to go ahead and run that. I've already done this on my machine, so it won't make much difference, but we'll run it just so you can see what it looks like. And it goes through a couple of things. So it pushes the banner, but then you can see it's going to create this alias called kit. The command is going to be /kit. So you don't have to type that / all the time. You can just type kit, and that way it's just a little easier to run this all the time. If you have Z shell, you may have to restart this manually yourself, but I shouldn't have to restart this at this point. If I type kit, I will get the help menu. I don't have to type /kit anymore. That still works, but my alias works too. I can just type in kit. Okay, so step number 1 is done. All right, so the next step is to create our application development environment. We're going to choose the Laravel template, and we're going to run this kit new Laravel command. If you're going to choose the Flask template or one of the other templates that are included, and you can see kind of the list here, you can run that template. But for this example, I'm going to go ahead and run kit new. Instead of running in my terminal window, which will function, it'll work, I'm going to go ahead and run it in an IDE. So I have PyCharm up, and what you can see here at the very top is the directory project, and inside you see infra, and in infra is the Git repo. So I have a terminal window open here at the bottom. If we look at the current directory, I'm in the infrastructure directory, which is this directory here. And so now I should have access to all my kit commands, and we can see those here. So we're going to go ahead and clear this out. And by the way, I just ran the kit help menu. You can get help anytime you want just by typing kit, and then it'll give you a list of all the commands that you have available to you. The other thing it does is it creates a couple other directories for me. So it creates an apps directory, and it creates a code directory that's outside my infra. So in project, there's a code directory and an infra directory, and then there's an apps directory inside infra also now. Okay, so let's create a new Laravel application. So for that, I'm going to use the kit new command, and I just specify the template, which is going to be Laravel. The template then asks me some questions. So I can configure this application, which is going to be a Laravel application, how I want it to be. I'm going to accept most of these defaults. In fact, I think I'm going to accept them all. So the short name is going to be Laravel. So for the Git repo, if you don't specify anything here, it's going to pull down the latest code from Laravel. So whatever it's on, 11, 12, or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy and paste in a repo that I have that I've been using for a little bit. It's a Laravel demo application. I'm going to keep the ports exposed, 8001 and 44301. This also has a MySQL service that's embedded into the dev environment, and same thing with a Redis service. So we're going to let it do its gyrations now, and it's going to create this Laravel application for us. We will see it doing some of the standard things that we see when we create Laravel applications. It'll start off by cloning the code, and that was up here just a little bit, but now you can see it's running Composer install. After Composer install is complete, it's going to run npm install. It'll do the migrations, and when it's done, it'll spin up my web application for me. It'll open up the browser tab, and it actually opened up the tab in another environment, which is over here. I'm just going to go ahead and center this up so we can see this is my screen. We'll just join these two together. So now I have two windows open. I have one to the kit itself, the GitHub repo, and then this is the new one. Now this particular demo uses some database data that is just kind of mocked up. We are going to come back and we're going to run kit again because I want to see the commands. Before, we would have the top set of commands, which are all the base kit commands, which allows me to create applications and provision and do other things, which we'll talk about. But now I have some application specific commands for Laravel. So this is a Laravel application. I have access to my artisan commands. So those will feed right through. And what we're going to do is we're going to run kit Laravel artisan db seed, and that'll seed the database. We'll be able to come back over here and refresh. And now I should have some data showing up here. So there you go. So now we got data. All right, so at this point, that completes step number 2. Okay, so the next step is we have to provision some servers. This by far is the most manual step right now. I'm working on a way to automate this first step, which is we have to manually go into, say, Amazon AWS, and we have to create some EC2 instances. I'm going to show you how to do that manually. Hopefully here in the near future, I have a kit command that will just automatically spin those up for you. But for now, this is manual. We're going to do this step number 1. To do that, we're going to use our Amazon AWS console. I'm in. If you've never been around here before, if you type EC2, you can get to this area where you can see your instances running. I don't have any instances running right now. I'm going to click on the launch. And what I'm going to do is just name these all swarm. It's important that we choose, instead of 2404, there's some issues with the Ansible scripts on this one, so I'm going to choose 2204. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm that change, that I understand what that is. We're going to use T2 macros. I'm going to select my Laravel demo key pair that I've been using for these applications. For the network settings, we're going to put this in my Laravel demo VPC. And the reason I'm doing that is because in that VPC, I have a couple other services running. I have an Amazon RDS for MySQL, so it's a MySQL database running. I also have an Amazon Elastic Cache, so Redis. So I have Redis running. In that VPC, those services will be used later on. Everything else is okay there, and then we're gonna have to select a couple of security groups. I've already got these kind of pre-made. I have a Docker Swarm security group, and that opens up all the ports that you need for Docker Swarm. And if you don't know what those are easy to find out. If you just search on Docker Swarm, ports, and under the getting started, I think it's in here. So if we just look down, scroll down, here you can see the ports. So port 2377, 7946, and 4789. So you need to create a security group that opens up those ports, which I already did in the past. So I have that, I'm just going to use it. The other thing that I need is I need to have SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS. So secure shell, and then also the web application ports. And then finally, one more security group. I need this EC2-RDS2. This allows these EC2 instances to talk to and connect to the RDS that I have to run in this VPC. So those are the three security groups that I have. Everything else I'm going to leave the same. I'm going to spin up 3 of these. And you can spin up as many as you want in your swarm. So 3, 4. I'm just using 3. I'm going to come back to my instances. And you can see these are pending right now. Just give them a little bit of time. They should be running here soon. And these other ones, I had some old swarm nodes and some other nodes that I've just stopped. Okay, so these 3 are running. Let's go ahead and just filter on the running one so we can focus in here. And I'm going to rename these a little bit so they mean more to us. That's going to be my swarm manager. It's going to be my swarm worker number 1. And this will be swarm worker number 2. And the final thing that I need to do manually here still is I need to add a IAM role. And this role allows the EC2 instances to access Amazon Elastic Container Registry, which is where I'm putting my Docker images. We'll add that role to all 3 of these. And again, while I'm doing this, this is a very manual step at this point. My goal is to write some Ansible playbook here for us that will automate most of this, or if not all of it. Okay, so I've got these 3 instances running. They're still initializing, but that's okay. So if I go back to my instructions at this point, I've just done step number 1. Step number 2 is we're going to run this command kit make server, and we'll see what that does. I'm going to use my IDE to do that. Clear this out. So kit make server, and then it takes a name. So what we're naming is we're naming this Docker Swarm instance. This could be my test server. This could be my production server. It could be, my staging server. It doesn't matter what it is, but we're just giving it a name. We're going to name it prod for production, and we're going to hit enter. And then you can see it says it successfully created this new servers/prod, and we can see new directory up here with a new subdirectory. So after that, there are 3 steps we have to do to configure this new server, and we're going to do all 3 of these. One is to take an SSH key pair and put it in the SSH directory. And so I've copied one off screen, and I'm just going to paste it in here. All right, so I've copied and pasted it in. So now I have this key pair that I create all these EC2 instances with in this .ssh directory. And the reason we need this here is because under the hood, we're using something called Ansible. And Ansible needs to be able to SSH in to all these EC2 instances to provision them and configure them. So that's why we need that there. Step number 2 is we're going to update the inventory.yaml file with all the IP addresses. So if we look at the inventory, you can see it here. It says the public IP address of the swarm manager. So that's easy enough. We'll go back over to our EC2 instance. Let's just pluck these addresses. More of just a copy and paste here. Get the private IP address, needs that next. The key file isn't called this, it was called Laravel _demo.pem, and be sure it exists. So we've done that also. I'm just going to remove that. This next section, we are going to use the kit to provision all these workers. So we're going to uncomment this code, and we need the public IP addresses. It's going to go ahead and get this as the same key while we're here. So I need the public IP address of swarm worker number 1 and swarm worker number 2. And then I can uncomment this one. Okay, so let's get these 2. These are the public IP addresses that Ansible can use to SSH in. Okay, let's come back to our instructions. We've updated this inventory, update the server settings. To be honest, there's nothing in there that you have to update right now. I only support Amazon AWS as the cloud provider. So you can just leave that the same. So step 3 is we're going to use the provision command to provision these servers that we got set up. But before we run that, I just want to make sure that they are done initializing. So they all have completed their initialization here. So we're going to run the git provision command now. And it takes the name of the swarm server. So we named that prod. So we're going to call this prod. When we run this under the hood, the kit is going to use Ansible, and that's a configuration management tool that will remotely log into all those servers and configure them all for us. So we shouldn't have to do a lot of work here. So we're going to let that run. And if you're familiar with Ansible kind of outputs, you can see that we're running some playbooks and we're getting some tasks that are running. We're just going to let this complete all on its own. And while this is working, I mean, this is actually doing quite a bit of work for us. And it's making sure that all of these servers are configured exactly how we need them. Making sure that all the Linux packages that we need are installed using apt install. It's making sure that all the pip packages that we need for Python are installed. It's installing Docker and all of those packages that Docker needs. It's creating a Docker user so that Docker runs under that user. And then at the very end, it's going to configure our nodes into a Docker swarm with 1 manager node and 2 worker nodes. So it's doing quite a bit of work for us. We don't have to do this manually. Just run that git provision command and this is all done. I do envision, again, a command that we can run that will create all of our servers for us in the future, so we don't have to manually create those. But for now, we manually did that in the Amazon AWS console. So this is almost done. While this is running, I'm going to open up another terminal window here. And this one, we are going to go ahead and connect to our Swarm Manager. So I need its public IP address. And for that, I need SSH. I'm going to specify a key. And the key for this, I mean, let's just look at where we're at here. The working directory is project, so it's out here. So the key then, the identity file, is going to be under infra servers prod.ssh, and it's the Laravel PEM file. The user is going to be Ubuntu, and it's that at the IP address that I copied. So this is a brand new server, so yes, we understand, and now we're in that server. Let's go back over here to, this is our infrastructure, and that's going to be our server. So I'm just going to name these infra, and we'll name this the manager node. Okay, so here under our infra, that has completed. So you can see everything is completed. You can scroll back through and see all the different tasks that it did. We're not going to do that. But what I want to do is show you on the manager now that Docker is installed. We have a version of Docker installed. And if I run Docker node ls for listing, you'll see that it lists out the 3 different nodes and it has one designated as a leader. So that git provision command has done a lot of work for us. And now our servers are configured and we're ready to go. That completes step number 3. Okay, so we're on to step number 4, which is deployments. This is going to be pretty quick and easy. Most of the hard work was done in step number 3 where we provision those servers. So we're going to make use of a few new commands. So we're going to use kit, whatever the app was, and we call our app Laravel. So we're going to say kit Laravel make registry, and that's what we're going to run first. Let's come back to our terminal window. We're going to use the infrastructure terminal window for this. So kit Laravel make. So the make command allows you to make new features for the kit itself. And what we're going to make here is we're going to make something called a registry. And what this is going to do is it's going to take us through kind of a wizard. And we have to answer some questions about the container registry that we're using. So which container registry we're using right now, I support 2 of them, either Amazon ECR or Docker Hub. So we're going to say Amazon ECR. And then for ECR, what's the account ID or username? And that is going to be, I'm just going to copy and paste these answers in for me. Enter the repository name, this. And by the way, let's just go real quick and check out where you can find these at. If I go back to my instances and I type ECR, I can find the Elastic Container Registry. I already created this repository here. And then once you get in here, you can start to see some of this information. So here's my ID, Here is the repo, some of the other things like, what region are we posting to, and all that's there. So no magic involved. I previously harvested all these values and we're just entering them here. Into the version that we're going to deploy. We're going to deploy version 4.0, US East 1, that's the default. And now it's done some work for us. It's created a couple of changes. So it's changed this file. So under infra apps laravel.env.prod. Let's go take a look at that first. So apps laravel.env.prod. So there's two env files. There's a .env.dev, which is for development purposes, and this is everything that's going to be on your local machine. And then this is the .env.prod that's for production, the production environment. So what this make registry command did is at the very bottom, you're going to see all of these registry values that we just entered here. So that's all it's done. So a little wizard asked us some questions and then it entered that data into our .env.prod. Now while we're in the .env.prod, let's go ahead and just take a scan here. So the HTTP port on production is going to be port 80. We're going to push this to port 443. A lot of this stuff we're not building, so we don't really need that. And we'll just leave everything else the same. So one quick discussion I want to just have is the difference between the dev environment and the prod environment. In the dev environment, you can see here the compose.dev file, and there's a volume being mapped in, which is a code directory, which is up here. So under code, there's a Laravel directory, and that volume is mapped into my image. So when I make changes to this, those changes automatically they're live on our website and they just appear there. That's not really how I want my production environment to work. So in production, we don't have a volume. So if you look at, close this up a little bit here, we look at our .prod, there's no volume mapped in, but what we are doing in the .prod environment is we're using the code repo and we're pulling the code into our image, and then we're doing all the build steps that we have to do to make that function. And that's all happening in the web.dockerfile. This is a multi-stage build. There's a base image. There is down here, there will be a prod, and then right above it, there will be a dev. So under prod, you can see here's where we get cloning. We're pulling in a .env.prod, and we're doing all the build steps that we have to do to make this one run. So one of the things that I do want to point out here is this build step right here is going to copy from a Laravel directory, which we don't currently have right now. There's no Laravel directory inside of this, a .env.prod. So what I want to do is I'm going to make a new directory here called Laravel. There's two directories called Laravel. There's Laravel subdirectory inside Laravel here. That's our project. This is our .env files. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to create a .env.prod. And this file, whatever's in this file, is going to get put into our production environment. What I'm going to do is I already have some information here, and we're just going to copy and paste this in and save it. And I'm just going to go down this. This isn't exactly a production environment because I still want to get some debugging information if something goes wrong. But for now, I'm going to leave this all the way it is. So that really would be production. This would be false. And we probably have a domain set up, but we don't really have a domain. Here's some of the main stuff that I wanted to show you is in prod. I talked earlier about having this RDS instance. So I've updated the DB hosts. And I think this is correct for a database username and password for that. And then down here, I have a Redis host. So that's our Elastic hash. So at this point, let's go back to our instructions. We made this registry. We did a couple of little things in our application just to make sure we're ready for the prod. And now we're gonna build an image. So we're gonna use a kit app. Our app name is Laravel, and the image command to build an image. So kit Laravel image, and that'll build the image. I already have a lot of these steps cached. I've done this a couple of times already, so this went really fast for me. But you can see things in here like up here where I copied that .env.prod file, so that's all there. But now we have this image. Next step is we need to push this image up to our container registry. So we're going to use another kit command. So it's going to be kit Laravel push. We'll put a tag on the end. The tag is optional. So just so we have a clear delineation, clear it out. So kit Laravel push. The tag is optional. If I don't put any tag, it's going to default to whatever was in my .env.prod, and down here on the registry is 4.0. So that's what it's going to go to. I'm just going to leave it the same. So you can see here tag is 4.0, and it's pushing this data up to the registry. And we go look at our next step, which is kit deploy. So kit Laravel deploy, and then we have to have a destination. So kit Laravel deploy. The destination is one of our servers that we set up. So if we look at our structure here, that's where our app was. This is where our application code is. This is where our infrastructure code is. And then down here are these servers. These are the destinations. So right now we have one destination called prod, and we already configured that. That was the inventory, server settings, and the SSH pair key that we already created. So we are going to deploy this to our production environment. And again, under the hood, run some Ansible scripts. So that's going to go ahead and take off and do its thing. At the very end, you can see yellow. Yellow means for Ansible that it made some changes. If I go over to my manager now, here in the manager, I'm going to do a couple of Docker commands just so we can see. So if I run Docker service ls, we should now see we have this web. It's not quite running yet because that image is a little bit bulky and it takes a little bit of time to run this down. But let's go ahead and just make sure that we don't have any issues with it. I can do a PS and provide the name. And we can see that it's been running for about 8 seconds. So if I go back to the ls command, now our replica is there. So just navigating back to our EC2 instance and our manager node. If we open this address now, we're going to get a privacy error because we have a self-signed certificate and I don't really have a domain here. But you can see, obviously there's data, and that data is from the RDS instance. So we configured this to attach to a database that already exists or had a bunch of data in it. So now we are running this in our production environment. Okay, one bonus feature that we have here. There is a visualizer that's nice to deploy to our Docker Swarm so we can visually see where things are. And so there's a kit command, kit viz, and we can deploy, which we're going to use that deploy command again, over to our prod servers. So what this is there's a viz stack. If you look under code, there's stacks here. There's a viz stack. And what that is it's a kind of a self-contained application that doesn't really need any other environment. It's just a Docker compose file. So if you look at that, that's going to run on our manager node. So we're going to go ahead and deploy this viz stack. So it's already completed. If I go back to my manager, here I run Docker service ls. I should see 2 of them now. And now I have that viz visualizer service that's on port 8080. I'm going to copy this Laravel tab, duplicate it, and we're going to switch to port 8080, but it doesn't have an SSL cert, so we're going to just do HTTP. And now I have the visualizer. So the visualizer is running. I can see my Laravel application here is on our manager node, and the visualizer is on the manager node also. And just to add a little bit more bonus content here for this video, if I go back to my code, I'll close out all of this so we can just focus in on the file that we're looking at. So directory structure here under code, this is my application code. So as a developer, I go and I change my application. I make my web pages look different. I do everything I need to in there. Then under the apps directory, there is also a Laravel folder, and that has all my infrastructure as code content. So for my DevOps people, this is where you're going to come in and you're going to change your Docker files and whatever else you need to make modifications to make those servers how you want them. What I want to do here is I'm going to look at the docker compose.prod, and there'll be a deployment section, and it says 1 replica. So I'm just going to change this to 3. I know I have 3 nodes, so I'm going to change this to 3. I'm going to come back over to my infrastructure here. We'll clear this out, and we're going to git Laravel deploy to prod one more time. So that's going to take this new configuration, which is 3 replicas, and it's going to work it. And I'm just going to switch back over to here. And as that's working, you're going to see 2 more Laravel instances pop up. So let's let that just kind of go in the background for me. If I'm being impatient, I think it's done already. So I see here some change, so that's good. That worked. Over here, do I hit refresh? It's still working. I'm still thinking about it. If I go back here, my manager, and I say Docker service ls, I should see it says 3 of 3, so it should be already running. And now I actually see them. So it takes a little bit of time for those images to pull down and deploy to our nodes. But now I have 3 instances running, and Docker Swarm takes care of the load balancing for me. So as I hit that endpoint, it's going to balance that load between all the Docker Swarm nodes. So now my application is still functioning here, still getting data. So everything's looking good. All right, so the last thing is let's just review what we did here. So we did the installation, just a manual process, copy and paste this and make that run. We created our development environment. That was pretty easy. It was just a single line of code, and we followed the questions and we had our development environment running. By far the most work that we had to do was we had to manually provision our EC2 service. Hopefully I'll have a kit command here soon that will just take care of that for us. But right now, this is your responsibility. You have to manually build up those EC2 instances. Then we ran kit make server, gave it a name prod. We configured our .ssh, our inventory, our server settings. Then we ran kit provision prod, and that provisioned those servers. Ansible went through all the servers, made sure that they had everything installed on them that we needed. Then we ran a couple of more little steps here. Kit Laravel make registry. So what that did is ask us about our container registry, and it got us all set up for that. Kit Laravel image to build the image. Kit Laravel push, you can tag it to latest. We just did 4.0. So that built our image and pushed it up to our container registry. And then finally, we ran kit Laravel deploy prod, and that pushed that deployment of Laravel 4.0 to our production environment. Then we had a couple of bonus things where we talked about the visualizer and also how to scale. And finally, there's more information here that I put up on the README. It talks about the directory structure, kind of goes into more detail, talks about the commands in general in the 2 different environments, dev versus prod. Templates. These templates are very powerful. This is one of the reasons why I'm developing this framework, is that I want this to be technology stack agnostic. So if you're a Laravel developer, you can work in this kit. If you're a Django developer, you can work in this kit. So that's my goal. But the templates have a certain structure. This kind of documents that structure. You can absolutely create your own template, follow kind of that structure. There's also a little README in there, and you can take care of that. This kit has a lot of history. So I have some videos that, as they get older, they probably lose some value, but I think there's still some value in some of these older videos. So I'm keeping these around here so you can always look at those. So what's on the horizon for the kit? In my backlog, I have this step. I want to be able to have some Ansible scripts that automatically create the EC2 instances, adds the security groups, adds the IAM role, does all of that for you. So that's certainly one of the things that I'm working on. Another thing I'm working on is, so you saw the Laravel workflow, from development to pushing it out to a prod swarm server or a staging server or whatever you're going to push it. That's pretty complete and that's functional. Some of the other templates, not so much. They have a great development environment, but they don't have that production side yet. I want to take those other templates and just kind of hone those in and make those more functional. And then besides just making the existing templates more functional, I want to add new templates. If you're, for example, a React developer, I don't have a React template yet. I would love to have a React template. It's just a matter of time. So I'm just focusing my efforts trying to get the kit structure, everything's working, the basics working, and then I can start to focus in on the templates. But in the meantime, if you want to build a template, I would love to have you contribute. Just follow the instructions here on the templates and do a git pull request, and I'd be happy to look at that. So that's it for now. I've been spending a lot of time on this kit. At some point, if you're interested, I might dive into some of the code and some of the details and how things work under the hood. This video is just more of how to use the kit and just get it working in your own environment. So hopefully you enjoy this content. If you like this kind of thing, hit that like button and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.